On a cold morning in September 1983, in Gage County, Nebraska, the wind cut across the cornfields like a blade that had forgotten how to stop. The sky was pale, almost washed out, and the soil was dry enough to crack under a boot heel. That was the morning the Harrison Grain Cooperative posted a notice on the office door. If the harvest didn't move in the next 72 hours, every farmer in a 30-mile radius would lose their contracts. Storage was full. Rail shipments were delayed. Diesel costs had doubled since spring. And in the middle of it all stood one machine nobody wanted to talk about anymore. A 1957 Farmall 450, red paint faded to a dusty rust orange, sitting under a tarp behind an old barn on the edge of Beatrice County line land. 48 horsepower, gasoline start, bought new in 1957 for $2,400 by a man named Walter Hennings, who never imagined it would still be alive in 1983. Walter was now 72 years old. He didn't rush. He never did. Let me tell you about Walter Hennings. He had the kind of hands that didn't look like hands anymore. They looked like history carved into skin, deep lines, oil-stained creases that never fully washed out no matter how hard he scrubbed them. His boots were older than most of the men who laughed at him, and his eyes, they didn't argue. They observed. Across town, in a brick office with a metal desk and a polished nameplate, sat Roger Calloway, a county agricultural loan officer, 38 years old, clean shirt, clean records, clean confidence. Roger had already made up his mind. The Hennings tractor, he said, was non-viable equipment, his exact words. He even laughed when he said it. Let me tell you about that laugh. It wasn't loud. It was worse than loud. It was casual. The kind of laugh that assumes the outcome is already decided. Walter stood there in the office doorway, while Roger flipped through a folder. "Mr. Hennings," Roger said, tapping the paper, "this machine hasn't been commercially relevant since the Kennedy administration." A few clerks chuckled behind him. Walter didn't respond immediately. He just nodded once, slow, like he was agreeing with something only he could hear. Then he said, "You ever start something that refused to die?" Roger smiled. "Sir, we deal in efficiency, not nostalgia." That was the moment the room shifted, even if nobody admitted it, because Walter didn't raise his voice. He just turned around and walked out, and when he did, Roger Calloway laughed again, louder this time. He said it so everyone could hear. Let the old tractor save the county then. Nobody saw Walter's face as he crossed a gravel lot, but he was already thinking about the engine, not as a machine, as memory. And that night, under a single yellow bulb in his barn, he pulled the tarp off the Farmall 450. The engine didn't start, not at first, but Walter wasn't surprised. He never was. He just set his hand on the hood and said quietly, "All right, old friend, let's see what you remember." And somewhere deep inside the block, metal shifted. Not much, just enough. The engine coughed. Once, then again, and then the barn door creaked open behind him, and Roger Calloway was standing there, watching, smiling like nothing in the world could possibly go wrong. He leaned against the frame and said, "You're really going to try that thing?" Walter didn't look back. He just reached for the choke and pulled. The engine answered, but not the way anyone expected, not even Walter, because outside the barn, in the distance, the first grain trucks of harvest season were already lining up on roads that had no way forward. And the Farmall 450 was about to decide which direction the entire county would go. The next morning, Gage County woke up to silence on the roads. No grain trucks, no diesel engines, no movement at the elevators, just waiting and frustration. Let me tell you about what happens when a harvest stops mid-season. It doesn't feel like failure at first. It feels like tension, like the land is holding its breath. Walter rolled the Farmall 450 out at 6:17 a.m. The tires left faint red dust trails across the gravel, like it was remembering where it had been. Roger Calloway was there again. Of course he was. He stood with a clipboard. "Mr. Hennings," he said, "you're not seriously planning to use that for transport?" Walter adjusted his cap. "I'm planning to use it to work." Roger laughed, and this time others joined in. Farmers standing near their stalled trucks, mechanics leaning against toolboxes. Even a dispatcher shook his head. It was the laugh moment, the kind that spreads fast, the kind that makes a man feel small in front of everyone who already decided he's wrong. Walter didn't react, not even a flicker. He just climbed onto the seat, pressed a starter, and let the engine catch. It didn't roar. It didn't impress. It just worked, slowly, steadily, like it had all the time in the world. Let me tell you about the Farmall 450. It wasn't built for speed. It wasn't built for comfort. It was built in Rock Island, Illinois, as part of International Harvester's post-war production line, designed to pull, not perform. Torque-heavy crankshaft, simple carburetor system, no electronics, no hesitation. In modern terms, it produced about 48 horsepower, but horsepower never tells the whole story, because torque is what moves weight, and that machine had torque like patience made of iron. Roger stepped forward. You think that thing can move what 10 modern rigs can't? Walter finally looked at him and said, I don't think. He paused, then added, I remember. The tractor pulled forward, and something strange happened. The line of stalled grain trucks at the county road split, not because they wanted to, because they had to. The Farmall wasn't fast, but it didn't stop, and as it moved toward the first elevator gate, Roger's smile faded slightly, just slightly, because the gate operator was unlocking it. Have you ever owned something everyone said was worthless? Something you refused to throw away even when logic said you should? Something that still worked when nothing else did? That morning, Walter Hennings became a problem the county could no longer ignore. And Roger Calloway stopped laughing because the elevator operator had just made a call, and what he said next changed everything. The rails are open, he said into the radio, but only for one tractor. And he looked directly at Walter. By noon, the situation had changed from inconvenience to crisis. Every grain elevator in south central Nebraska was now backed up beyond capacity. Diesel rationing had slowed every commercial hauler, and the corn was ready. Waiting too long meant rot, loss, bankruptcy. Let me tell you about the sound of a county under pressure. It's not loud. It's silence between machines that should be running. Walter's Farmall moved between stalled equipment like a memory that refused to fade. Roger followed now, not mocking anymore, just watching, studying. Then something broke the tension entirely. A combined engine in the field behind the depot failed completely. Smoke, sudden stop, dead weight. Someone cursed. Someone else threw a wrench. And that's when Roger laughed again. But not like before. This one was nervous, almost disbelieving. Okay, he said, shaking his head. This is ridiculous. One old tractor isn't going to fix. Walter cut the engine. Silence. Then he said calmly, let me tell you about machines. The yard went quiet. He stepped down, wiped his hands on a rag. Machines don't fail all at once, he said. They fail when people stop understanding them. Roger didn't answer. Walter continued. Modern engines protect themselves. Sensors, cutoffs, limits. This one doesn't. He tapped the hood. This one only knows one thing. Keep pulling until it can't. And then he restarted it. The sound was heavier now, stronger, like it had decided something. Within an hour, the elevator line started moving, not because everything was fixed, but because something was working. And that's when Roger finally said it, not to Walter, to himself. He shouldn't be right. But he was, and the machine kept moving forward until the county itself began to move with it. And then, halfway across the loading yard, the tractor slowed. Not stopped, slowed, like it had found resistance that wasn't mechanical. And Walter looked ahead, and what he saw at the grain gate made even him go quiet, because the rail manager had just stepped out holding a paper and said one sentence that no one expected. The county shipment order just changed. 10 years later, in 1993, the Farmall 450 still ran, not daily, but enough. Walter Hennings never left Gage County. He passed in the winter of 1995, quietly at home, with oil under his fingernails that never fully washed away. Roger Calloway stayed, but he changed. He transferred into rural infrastructure planning. He stopped laughing at old machines, and he kept one photograph on his office wall. The Farmall, still moving, still working. Let me tell you about what remained. The tractor was restored, but never modernized. Same engine block, same frame, same weight of history. And every harvest season after that year, it was started once, just once, to remind people what it meant to trust something built to last. The land recovered. The elevators expanded. Rail systems modernized. But the story never left. Because people don't forget what kept them from collapse. They only learn to respect it. And if you stood in that county long enough, you could still hear it sometimes. That engine, not loud, just steady, like it never needed permission to matter. Some machines are built to compete. Others are built to endure. And the difference between them is the difference between being replaced and being remembered. Some things don't stop working when they get old. They just wait for a moment when everything else does. And that old tractor never stopped understanding that truth. If you knew someone like Walter, someone who kept something running long after everyone said it should be gone, tell me about them in the comments. I read every story. And if you want to hear about the farmer in Holt County who buried a broken combine in a creek bed for 11 years just to keep it from being repossessed, that story is next, and it's one you won't forget.